Welcome, everybody. My name's Ken Seaton, co-founder of Athletes Touch with Justin Blaine. Welcome to the Tower of Power podcast that we've got coming at you right now. We're an exclusive community helping former pro and college athletes in the business world get ready to rocket fuel your ship, professionally speaking. I'm here. Justin, go ahead and take it away.
If you like great stories, sports, and success, you're in the right place. Buckle up and join us for a great ride.
Tune in today to Mike Nikias. Westlake Village local legend to Major League Baseball to now baseball agent at CAA. Hear him share some amazing tips around negotiating for player contracts, as well as some incredible stories.
A couple times in the last 10 years, got to run into him with my son Mike, why don't you take it from the top, share some of your background. We're excited to have you, and then we'll fire into some questions too.
Sure, my man, and thanks guys for having me this morning. Like Justin said, I went to Westlake High School. I played baseball there, and was fortunate enough to go on to Georgia Tech. Played there for 3 years, was drafted, and went on to play 11 years professionally, parts of 4 years in the major leagues, mostly with the Mets, a little bit with the Blue Jays. And when I finished, I had a year left of my degree, wanted to go back and complete my education, and had the opportunity to start coaching in a volunteer capacity for the Georgia Tech baseball team. The head coach there, Danny Hall, was my coach, is still there, still coaching there, and doing well. I did that for almost 5 years. Had an opportunity then to kind of move into a space where I always thought that I might move into. My agent, when I played, I was represented by CAA. My agent is a man named Nes Balello. He's been a mentor of mine for a long time. He coached me, and James and Justin, I'm sure, coached me since I was 8 years old. From there, was a wonderful agent, really focused on the development of my career. Paid attention to me and helped me maximize my opportunities. He was lobbying as soon as I decided to quit. He was lobbying to get me into this world, and I kind of held back for a little while. I was really interested in the development and the coaching aspect of baseball. Like Justin mentioned, I think that's something that always, for a catcher, that's always something that it's kind of a selfless role in a lot of ways. I felt coaching would be something that would be very natural for me. And I'm finding out that being an agent and taking those same principles and bringing them over to the agenting world, which is a crazy one, it has worked out really well. So I've been with CA about 2 years, and it's been great.
So Mike, you're one of the best storytellers that I've ever known. Talk about how storytelling has impacted your life, not just in baseball, maybe with teammates, but from a coaching and mentoring, and then now sitting in front of parents and high school kids and college kids talking about what their life looks like going forward. Why or how has that been important to you?
Yeah, I think when you can tell a great story, especially one that's personal. My mom always told me what comes from the heart speaks to the heart. I've been fortunate to be in baseball a long time now as I age. When you can tell a great story and you can relate to it as you're telling it, I think people believe in it. They believe in you. They start developing that trust in you that you have experience. You have their best interests at heart. And I think it just becomes a very relatable message. And when you can do that, when you truly believe what you're saying, it's a powerful statement. So the stories you tell a pitcher in the clubhouse when you're trying to develop that bond, develop that relationship, and his trustingness in you will eventually carry over to something in a game, in a pressure-packed situation. It will become a reliability thing. He'll believe in you because you built that background very quickly by telling a wonderful story or a personal story about yourself. I think it's critical in that accelerated relationship. A lot of times we find that in sales and what I do now when I was recruiting at Georgia Tech. When you get people to that point where they are invested in you, they believe you. And hopefully it's true what you're telling them. They're not believing in something fake, but I found that it very much helps the process of selling or just developing somebody when you can relate to them through storytelling.
So your dad was a professional soccer player. So you saw that growing up. How did that shape you as far as carrying yourself? That's why I said earlier, you've always kind of carried yourself as if you were a pro when you were 10, 12, 15 years old, almost like you knew. How did that impact you kind of growing up, visualizing where you were headed?
I think I was really fortunate in that my dad had walked a path that, a similar path that I was getting ready to walk. He instilled the confidence in me to believed that I could walk somewhat in his footsteps. And I trusted that he was leading me the right direction. He was at times hard on me as far as a discipline standpoint. He instilled the message that in order to achieve something great, you must sacrifice and make little sacrifices along the way. It's not always the big sacrifices that you think are going to be the thing that lead you somewhere. It's just the constant habit of making those little sacrifices to lead you to something and make you feel like you've earned something. You've earned the right to be there by making those little sacrifices along the way. So I think when you say that, Justin, that I feel like a professional, I appreciate that. It's a great compliment, and one of the best compliments I think a baseball player at least can hear. And I think that's part of the reason why it maybe felt that way, is because, I was just willing to not do something so I could do something else.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So talk about, you were a catcher. You were probably known as a defensive guy as opposed to a hitter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think your average was a little higher than my whip, neither of which was anything to write home about.
True.
Talk about, I see Hess laughing. Talk about just some of the struggles and overcoming them, and just baseball being a game of failure. What did you learn? What were your biggest takeaways that you kind of maybe utilize today when talking to younger kids?
Yeah, I think defense was definitely my forte. I think that part of the game always came a little more naturally to me. I think at a younger age, I was still pretty good at hitting, but you go through the process and you start dealing with things as you progress in your career. You start dealing with scrutiny on a new level, and for a younger adult, that's sometimes really difficult to handle, especially when you've been praised and you've had a lot of success at some lower levels. And if that quote unquote pyramid kind of comes to a peak, guys are really good. And so, when you do struggle, and then, you see on the back of the New York Post or the Daily News that you see your picture and the Mets need to trade for you, or, something like that goes on, and then they get rid of you, it affects you. And I think those experiences that I had, I don't want to say they hardened me, but I got through it. Right. And I'm fortunate that I did, and I'm able to look back on it, because I'm in an industry now where your batting average or your success rate is also kind of low. You have to be willing to have a thick skin, and it definitely thickened me up a little bit playing in New York, especially. And I'm very, very grateful. It's one of the best lessons I think I learned playing baseball is that you believe in something, you believe in yourself, then you go, right? And don't let anyone stop you.
Yep, I love that. So your nickname has been Bully, for those of you who don't know you, for I don't even know how long. Can you share that story?
I think it was, and I'll attribute it to, again, Nez, who's my agent. I think we were on like a little all-star team, little league all-star team or something, and one of the moms or coaches thought it would be a great idea for everyone to have a nickname. And so it just kind of went down the list, and the roster was all the nicknames. And I was kind of a little heavier set kid, let's say. Probably part of the reason I got put behind the plate to begin with. And I was like a little bulldog. I like to think I was tough, and Bulldog became the name, and then Nez kind of shortened it to Bully. I think probably when I was 10 or 11, and now it's kind of a name that's stuck. And all my high school friends, my family, it's just something that's stuck around.
Thanks, Mike. So we talk about relationship building all the time here, and you mentioned Nez being a mentor, now your partner boss. Whether or not you knew it, I'm sure at various places in time he looked at you as somebody to potentially have on board with him, to maybe be a transition plan for him down the road. What do you think is the most impactful thing from a relationship standpoint within sports or in the business world, now that you've really had a chance to kind of see both in great detail? What do you think makes relationships so special?
I think there's a level of part of what, even though he was my agent, I think part of what attracts and what really makes that mentorship thing work is the level of selflessness that you can give to somebody and really not expect something back for it. And I think when you have relationships like that, they just kind of naturally progress in a way. You feel like you're being helped, and then you hear the person because they've got nothing really at stake. Nez was one of those guys who was obviously my coach. I developed a lot of trust with him, but I've had wonderful mentors along the way that have given a lot to me that really didn't seem, at least, that there was anything for them to receive on the other end. It's part of the beautiful thing that you've got going here is there's a lot of people that are sharing stories, and great stories, in very different avenues of business. But mine is, I think selflessness is a huge key. If you do something because you're not for your own gain, it's really real, and people are attracted to that, and they tend to want to be a part of what you're doing, and they want to pay that back.
I'm going to give you some baseball specific questions. Take us behind the curtain right now. What's going on? What do the discussions look like? What is happening kind of in the inner circle of baseball? Where are we headed?
Sure. It's obviously like all of your industries, it's a crazy time in this. I will say this, that there's two forces that are really driving this thing, really three. Major League Baseball being one of them. And when I say Major League Baseball, I mean specifically ownership groups, general managers, front offices, et cetera. You have the Major League Baseball Players Association, which represents essentially all the players. You have those two forces kind of negotiating everything that's going on right now. I will say that both sides are very incentivized to play this year and to try to get as many games in as possible. Owners, even without fans in the stadiums, they've got to play, roughly have to televise 130 games, 130 days to be able to capitalize on their television deals. Players, to get paid, understand that they have to play and owners have to make some money. So I think both sides are really trying to get something done. The third force that I mentioned would be kind of your federal and state governments that are kind of dictating when any of that can happen. And that's out of the hands of Major League Baseball and the PA. So everyone's kind of waiting on that and waiting to see if we can turn this thing around a little bit. The effect of this whole situation in the baseball world is trickled all the way down to the amateur side, as you can imagine. High school seniors, a lot that we are advising for this year's draft, got their season cut short. Fortunately, a lot of the kids in Southern California were able to play some games, a couple weeks worth of games. A lot of kids in the Northeast and some of the colder states didn't get to play at all. It's really relative to what's going on in the world. I don't think it's that big a deal, but when you talk to a high school senior, it's affected them greatly. And it's really difficult. I think of you, Justin, and James in our last game together at Dodger Stadium in the CIF finals. That would have, even though we got beat up pretty good, those memories still connect us and carry us. And I think it's very difficult for those guys that didn't get to have that opportunity that we had. The amateur side is an interesting thing. College guys are now granted another year of eligibility, which makes it difficult for college coaches. And I know from being a college coach that in baseball, you get 11.7 scholarships. So trying to manage that with the influx of players that you thought were leaving for the draft, with the new kids that are coming in, trying to figure out what scholarships look like, and if there will even be the money to have a baseball season if football doesn't go off, and all this crazy stuff is happening. The amateur draft this year in baseball, when the PA and Major League Baseball decided that they were going to kind of pursue, and they had to negotiate what they were going to do for Major League players' salary, et cetera, in the interim before the season gets going, which hopefully it does relatively soon. They decided to shorten the draft from a typical 40-round draft now to as few as 5 rounds. What that does is it creates a huge glut of players that otherwise would have signed a professional contract now heading into college where they weren't before. So really huge implications top to bottom. Without getting too much into the weeds, I think you'll see some interesting fights in the media about salary if fans can't be in attendance for games. There's proposals that range from playing all 30 teams be in Arizona, playing at the various spring training facilities. They're talking about splitting the teams 15 and 15, Florida and Arizona. They're talking about having 3 stadiums on the East Coast, 3 stadiums on the West Coast, which 15 teams each, and they would kind of cycle those games throughout those stadiums. It's just kind of all speculative at this point. There's not a whole lot that I could tell you that's concrete. And again, that third party, the state and federal government is really going to have to be on board with what's going on. So a lot of stuff happening in baseball without boring you guys to death. It's been a busy time. And I really appreciate what you guys just said on the psychology of dealing with your clients. I think that's a major factor in what I do now and what all of us must continue to do for those people that look up to us for advice. And I've been on the phone, I feel like for the last 5 weeks, every day, retelling the story, retelling what we're doing and what's to come, but really just trying to be there for them in this time, because it's very uncertain. They're fearful. This is their livelihood. There's a very short window you have to play baseball. A lot of your clients, I'm sure, are feeling there's a very short time for them to keep the restaurant open, or what do they do about all these commercial buildings they may have? And I think the psychology and that aspect of what we do now is as important as ever.
Welcome to the intermission. Kent, who's this group for? Is it for Super Bowl champs?
Check.
How about cross-country skiers?
Check.
How about Olympic synchronized swimmers?
Triple check.
So it sounds like anybody who has an athlete's mindset or mentality could qualify here.
Quadruple check, Justin. This group is a rocket fuel powered community for former athletes to use their state of mind to succeed in the sport of business.
Who's the favorite guy you ever played with?
Favorite guy I ever played with? One guy that always impressed me was David Wright. You know, him and I remain relatively close. Watching the amount of pressure and scrutiny that guy was under in the times that we played together in New York, when our teams were not necessarily, you know, they were the Mets. We were being the Mets, typical Mets stuff. It was during the time when the ownership group, the Wilpon family, was dealing with the Bernie Madoff scandal, the whole thing. I think watching David not only handle the media, but perform the way he did at that time was incredible to me. I don't know that another guy could have handled that the way he did and continue to perform on the field and continue to be a great teammate all the time. So it's kind of rarefied air when you talk about David with me. He was an incredible athlete, incredible player, but also an awesome person.
Who's a guy that you looked at and kind of they just that had that kind of clout, it factor that you just walked in, you said, oh my gosh, wow, I'm in the room with this guy?
You know, when we play the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, and when Derek Jeter walks into the batter's box, it gives you the feeling as he's 8 foot tall. He just had that thing about him, and he's a lot bigger than a lot of people realize anyway. But when he stands in the box, I kind of look up at him and try to figure out what I'm going to do, because I know he's swinging at first pitch like he always did. And then he turns around and he like tapped me on the shin guard, and you know, he said like, "Hey, take it easy on me today, Nick." It was a really unique experience. It was a great moment for me. And then but that was the guy that, and I think everyone would still say that, he's just, you talk to him and you just kind of like, holy cow, it's a starstruck moment. And in baseball, for a baseball player, that happens very rarely.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. As a former player, what do you think of the commissioner's handling of the Astros cheating scandal? Should they have been stripped of their championship? Or I'll add to it, how prevalent was it even when you were playing?
I guess I'll start with, you know, my thoughts on the way the commissioner handled it. I think I'm not alone in saying that it was a little light. I think, you know, I don't know. He was in a difficult situation. I do think that when you look at the various cheating scandals that have gone on in the past with Major League Baseball, from the Black Sox scandal to the steroid era and everything in between that, this is terribly significant. And it was a huge, huge advantage, maybe more so than taking a PED. So I was a little bummed that it wasn't a little more serious. Obviously, some of the guys at the top, you know, went down, the managers and GM and et cetera. I feel like I have to be careful because I'm in the business of representing players for the most part. And I don't want to make it seem that I'm going easy on the players. As a former player, I do think it was very significant and it was really bad for the game. And I think they did a lot of harm. And I know a lot of you being from Westlake Village are probably Dodger fans. And I know it really upset a lot of the Dodger fans in the crowd. And I get it. You know, it feels like an injustice was done, and it doesn't totally feel like the punishment fit the crime. But I think if he went down the wormhole of punishing players in a very severe way, it would have been a significant precedent. But an old teammate of mine, Justin Turner, I think had a great point. He said, Manfred said the commissioner said there was no precedent set for something like this. And Justin Turner came back, I think, via Twitter and said something to the effect of, "But you've just set a precedent. It's pretty weak." So I'm not totally thrilled about it and the way it was handled, but you know, it is what it is, and we'll see what happens there. And the second part of the question was,
how prevalent was it when you were playing?
Honestly, when I stopped playing at 14, and the technology stuff in baseball, like you couldn't have any iPad or anything like that in the dugout. Our replay stuff was in a computer room. Guys were still tagging every pitch by hand manually. That's changed drastically over the last 6 years. Most of it's done with computer. Guys can have iPads in the dugout now. You'll see them looking at it, looking at previous at-bats and what pitcher they're about to face. So the technology piece was not as prevalent for stealing signs. It's always been a part of baseball, right? I think you're on second base and you start picking signs from a catcher. That's fine. That plays, right? That's always been part of the game. I think when you add the technology aspect in, where you may have a camera somewhere and you're decoding signs, and then you're somehow relaying via banging on a trash can or a haptic response system, whatever it may be, you have to know you're doing something wrong, and it's premeditated pretty significantly. So when I was playing, yeah, there's sign stealing, and we were very cautious about what systems we're using to keep that at bay, but nothing like we saw with what the Astros and perhaps the Red Sox did.
All right, I got time for a couple more. Why does Major League Baseball allow managers to verbally abuse the umpires?
That's a good question. I think that's also one of those things that was just kind of grandfathered into baseball. I think there's so many opportunities for a argument in baseball, maybe more so than a lot of other sports. There's decisions being made on every pitch that's caught by the catcher. There's out safe, all kinds of stuff. Rarely are they questioning a rule and arguing, but a lot of it I think has been there for a strategy for a manager to fire his team up, to get going. There's a lot of entertainment value in an otherwise slower game that I think they've left that in for now. It's interesting. We were talking about it the other day. The addition of or the implementation of a replay system has kind of quelled that manager going ballistic on an out safe call at first base or home plate. And there's something that's lost a little bit, because it was kind of fun seeing Buck Showalter go bananas on Joe West. And I think that's kind of a bummer that went out. Obviously, it's great that, you leg out that infield knock and you get called out, and it's great that you can get your single, right? Yeah, I think that mostly entertainment value, and because the game's a little slower, it's a tactic a lot of managers use to get the team going a little bit.
All right, last question. How does CAA work to create a brand beyond baseball for clients? As we know, baseball guys sometimes aren't as marketable, when traditionally they don't have large social media followings, and aren't marketed well or at all beyond the field.
What I found out about CAA, being a client, I think I have a unique perspective, and then kind of moving into a role as an agent, everything's a phone call away in our building. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And that's kind of like, it's something you hear and it's like, yeah, I get it. That's cute. It's reality. Now that I've worked there for a little while, I'm amazed at the network that CAA has. I think in the past, from what I understand, because it's the whole idea is to be, you won't see me next to my client, like taking credit for something my client has done, taking credit for a contract. That's just not in our DNA, I don't think, at CAA, but we're very much behind the curtain, behind our clients, helping drive them, helping create opportunities for them. So we haven't been very forward in the social media presence as far as just CAA is concerned. We build out a lot of stuff for our athletes and our entertainers and our artists. So I think it's one of those things that we're opening up to, and CAA as a whole is opening up to, as far as what's going on in the social media landscape. And you'll start seeing, I think CAA just started an Instagram page, and it was like very recently. They're seeing that that's important for our clients to understand who we are on a deeper level. As far as baseball and marketing opportunities, you're right, there's not a lot. I think we do a great job with our baseball clients. If you guys are interested in seeing it, you can check out CAA Baseball on Instagram. There's some really creative content, and it's from playing to what our guys are doing off the field. Really, the gaming industry right now, getting our clients to do these MLB The Show events and on Twitch or Caffeine or whatever various platform there is for watching gaming. That's not in my wheelhouse, I'll just say. But I think it's an amazing opportunity. I think we're very forward thinking and very creative in that. And we're very creative in our philanthropic stuff. The CAA Foundation is kind of at the heart of what CAA does. We push our clients to be involved when they want to be. For example, Ryan Zimmerman is kind of a cool contract story, and just how we kind of helped him. Washington, D.C., when he signed his contract, I think this is the only time it's ever been done. We negotiated the stadium for him for one day to host an event in his contract. So for the past 6 years, Ryan has had the stadium for a night. We have supplied and brought together, kind of packaged this whole charity event for Zim. We brought in CAA musicians and all kinds of stuff, and they've hosted it at Nationals Park in DC, which I think is really unique and kind of an awesome thing. So as baseball players are trying to become more popular, we're nowhere near what basketball is right now, nor football. I think baseball players are trying to break out into the world a little bit more as far as followers. One of our clients, I think, has a great opportunity to do so. He's an internationally somewhat famous person in Shohei Ohtani. And I think if we get him to a point where he feels comfortable doing all this stuff, I think he could be somebody that kind of breaks the barrier for baseball players into becoming more mainstream popular, not just in the U.S., but internationally.
Yeah, he's definitely a superstar and fun to watch. The Angels team should be interesting. All right, let's give everyone give Mike a little virtual round of applause here. That was awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Mike.
Another great story in the books. Who's inspired with me? Kent, where do people go from here?
God, Justin, I'm so glad you asked me that question. Everybody today, we're so excited to have you on this show. If you're interested in our Rocket Fuel Accelerator, if you'd like to join membership at Athletes Touch, go to our awesome website at www.athletestouch.co, and we'll see you soon. If you want to look us up on our social handles, LinkedIn and Twitter, Athletes Touch, at Athletes Touch. Thanks, guys.